I think I knew it was going to be a problem before I ever said the words out loud. I don't mean the exact moment, not the one where it all cracked open. I mean the quiet knowing, the kind that lives in your chest before it has a name. The kind that burns a little every time someone asks how excited you are for the big day. When you're planning a wedding, people treat it like you're building a perfect life. But no one ever asks what you're trying to keep out. The first time I met Ava, she was 5, wearing sparkly leggings and a superhero cape that hung too low on her tiny back. She had eyes like her father's, gray-blue and watchful. She didn't speak much to me. I didn't blame her. I wasn't her mom. I wasn't even anyone yet. That was 3 years ago. Back then, I told myself I had time. That love would stretch and grow around the shape of this child until it fit. That all the things I was afraid to say would become irrelevant. And maybe they would have. If the wedding hadn't made everything sharp. I don't think Ava should be in the family photos. I said it like I was asking about the weather. Like I hadn't rehearsed it in my head 100 times. Like it wasn't the most loaded sentence I'd ever spoken to the man I was supposed to marry. Jonah stared at me, fork frozen midair. It was a Tuesday night. Pasta. Wine. Candles, even. I'd tried to make it nice. Maybe some part of me knew how ugly it was going to get. What, he said, slowly. I think we should have pictures of us. You and me. As a couple. As a start. He blinked. Set the fork down. You want pictures without Ava? No, I said quickly. Not none. Just not the formal portraits. The ones we hang. The ones people frame. He was silent for too long. I hated that silence. I'd come to know it well. It always came before he made things easy for me. Before he swallowed his own wants so I didn't have to feel like the bad guy. But this time, he didn't. She's my daughter, Claire. His voice was soft, but there was a new edge to it. She's part of my family. I know, I whispered. But she's not part of mine. Not yet. There it was. The truth that tasted like guilt. The one I'd buried under floral samples and venue spreadsheets. The one I didn't know how to say until it came out sideways. He pushed his plate away. You're marrying me. I come with her. I'm not saying I don't want her there. I reached for his hand. He didn't take it. But this day, it's our day. I want something just for us. Jonah stood up. Took the plates to the sink. I sat there, stomach churning, listening to the water run. The clang of ceramic against porcelain was louder than it should have been. It was the first time I realized how much silence could hurt. And how heavy a single sentence could become when it's said too late. That night, he slept on the couch. I laid in our bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what it meant to build a future when part of you still hadn't made peace with the past. Wondering if I'd really said something terrible or if I'd just said something no one wants to admit. The next morning was stiff. He made coffee, poured me a cup, didn't look at me. I don't know if I can marry someone who doesn't want my daughter in a photo with us, he said finally. The coffee tasted bitter. It's not about not wanting her, I said. It's about having something that's just ours. Just for a moment. Before everything gets blended together forever. Do you even hear yourself? He asked. Blended together forever, that's what marriage is, Claire. I knew he was right. And I hated that he was right. Because part of me still felt like I was auditioning for a role I didn't choose, stepmother, second woman, forever guest in a story that started without me. I wanted to marry Jonah. I wanted to build a life with him. But I also wanted to feel like that life could be ours, not just something I was being folded into. I never had a blended family. My parents were married until my dad died. My mom never dated again. I grew up with a single idea of what family looked like, neat, clean, whole. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And I never realized how much I clung to that until I had to let it go. Ava isn't a bad kid. She's sweet, quiet, kind. She calls me Claire, never asked to call me Mom, and I never asked her to. Our relationship was polite, careful. Like we were always waiting for someone to define the rules. Maybe that someone was supposed to be me. And I just never did. That evening, after Ava went back to her mom's for the week, Jonah asked me a question. If we have a kid one day, will they be in the pictures? The question knocked the air out of me. Yes, I said. Then what will Ava be to them, he asked. An afterthought? A half-sibling who gets cut out of the frame? I didn't have an answer. Not one that didn't make me sound exactly like the woman I was afraid I might be. I need time, I said. You had time, he replied. And for the first time, I wondered if this wedding would still happen. Or if my need for something just mine had already cost me everything. We didn't talk about it again for almost a week. Not really. Jonah started coming home later than usual. I told myself it was work, and maybe it was, but I also knew he was buying space. The kind you can't ask for with words but take anyway when the air between you thickens. I didn't press. I buried myself in seating charts and menu edits. I busied myself with comparing ivory to off-white. You wouldn't think there could be that many shades of beige, but wedding planning will show you. And every time I looked at the line for family photos, I stopped. Left it blank. On Thursday, I met my maid of honor, Lena, for drinks. She was the one who'd introduced me to Jonah, 2 years after his divorce. She was also the only person who knew how uneasy I felt about my place in his life, or maybe more accurately, in Ava's. So, she said, swirling her wine, how's the timeline looking? I hesitated. Almost done. Just finalizing the photo list. She raised an eyebrow. Still? Claire, you've had that binder since before he proposed. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. There's a complication. Let me guess. Ava. I nodded. She didn't say anything at first, which is how I knew she was trying not to jump to conclusions. Lena is a fixer. She likes clear sides, simple rights and wrongs. But she also knows when it's not that easy. She's not your kid, she said finally. But she kind of is. At least on paper, she will be. She's Jonah's daughter, I said. She has a mom. She has a whole life that I'm just sort of adjacent to. But you're marrying him. I know. Lena leaned forward. Okay. Let me ask you this. When you imagine your wedding album, your mantle, the framed photo in the hallway, who do you see? I didn't answer right away. Because I knew she was trying to make a point, but all I could think about was the mental image I'd always had of a wedding. A couple. 2 people starting something new. Clean. Uncomplicated. I see us, I said. Just us. She nodded slowly. You know, I don't think that makes you awful. But it makes things complicated. Because for him? That picture without her might not feel like a beginning. It might feel like an erasure. I felt the sting in my chest. But if we include her in everything, where's the space for me? Lena touched my hand. Maybe the question isn't where the space for you is. Maybe it's whether you're willing to make space for her, too. That night, Jonah came home early. We ate quietly. Ava was staying with her mom that weekend. After dinner, I brought it up again. I've been thinking about the photos. He didn't look up from rinsing the dishes. Yeah? I think we should talk about it. Really talk. He turned off the faucet. Leaned against the counter. Okay. I took a breath. I know how that sounded. Before. I know what it implied. And I'm not proud of it. He crossed his arms. Then why did you say it? Because I'm scared, I admitted. Because I don't know what I'm doing. Because I feel like I'm stepping into something that already existed and I don't know where I fit. You fit with me. That's not always enough. He winced. You don't think you matter to her? I don't think I know what I am to her. And I think I've been afraid to find out. He sat down across from me. His eyes were tired. Softer. You don't have to be her mom. You don't have to pretend to be anything you're not. But if you're going to be in her life, really be in it, she needs to know she matters to you. And I need to know that, too. I nodded. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. I want to matter, I said. I want to be more than a placeholder. But I also want to feel like I get to choose how that looks. He reached for my hand this time. Then let's figure it out. Together. Later that week, I took Ava to the park. Just me and her. Jonah had suggested it gently, like a parent trying not to spook a skittish animal. At first, we sat in silence. She swung slowly, kicking at the dirt. Your dress is pretty, she said after a while. The one in the picture on the fridge. Thanks, I said. Do you want to wear something special for the wedding? She shrugged. I guess. Ava, I said. Do you want to be in some of the photos? She looked at me. Only if you want me to be. And I realized then, she wasn't trying to take anything from me. She was waiting to be invited. I do, I said. I really do. She smiled. A real one. And for the first time, I felt like maybe we weren't just orbiting each other. Maybe we were starting to build something. But later that night, Jonah told me Ava had said something to her mom. She asked if she needed her permission to be in our pictures, he said. I froze. What did her mom say? She didn't say no, he said slowly. But she asked to talk to you. My stomach dropped. Because now it wasn't just about Jonah. Or Ava. Now the ghost in the room had a voice. And she wanted a word with me. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there next to Jonah, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything I knew about Ava's mother and everything I didn't. Her name was Melissa. We'd met only twice, both times in the kind of strained, overly polite way that people have when forced into a dynamic they didn't sign up for. She was taller than me. Wore practical shoes and expensive perfume. The kind of woman who made you feel like you were being assessed. I didn't dislike her. I envied her. For how clear her role was. For how unquestioned her presence remained in Jonah's life. She wasn't just Ava's mom, she was part of his past, one that lingered quietly around the corners of our relationship like the scent of a candle you blew out hours ago. When Jonah gave me her number, I hesitated. She asked to talk to me directly? He nodded. She said she wants to understand where you're coming from. I laughed, sharp and short. Do you think that's true? I think she's being careful. And curious. And maybe, protective. Of course she was. I would be too. I stared at her number for half a day before I finally called. My hands were clammy. My heart pounding in that uneven way it does when you're about to enter a room where you know someone already has the upper hand. She answered on the third ring. Hello? Hi. It's Claire. A pause. Hi. Her voice was calm. Controlled. Like a woman who never raised it unless absolutely necessary. Jonas said you wanted to talk. Yes, she said, simply. I heard from Ava about the photos. I waited. Let the silence stretch. Let her make the next move. She wasn't upset, she added. Just uncertain. She didn't know what the rules were. I guess I didn't either. There aren't any, I said, and immediately regretted it. Because of course there were. Unwritten, shifting, impossible to navigate rules, about boundaries, about who gets to claim what. Melissa exhaled slowly. Look, I'm not trying to interfere. But Ava is 6. She doesn't understand all of this. She just wants to feel wanted. And I need to know she's not being made to feel like an accessory. The words stung more than I wanted them to. I'm not trying to exclude her, I said. I was afraid of what it would mean to include her. There was a beat. Because she's not yours, Melissa said, not unkindly. Yes. She didn't respond immediately. Then. You know, when Jonah first told me about you, he said you were careful. That you didn't rush in. That you respected Ava's space. I appreciated that. Still do. I swallowed. But Claire, she continued, being careful is good until it becomes distance. And kids feel distance. Even if they don't know how to name it. We talked for 20 minutes. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either. At the end, she said, whatever you two decide for the wedding, just make sure Ava feels like she belongs. That's all I care about. After I hung up, I cried. I didn't know why exactly. Maybe because I felt like I'd just been forgiven for something I hadn't realized I needed to be forgiven for. Or maybe because part of me wished I could be as composed, as steady, as self-assured as Melissa seemed. I told Jonah about the call. He didn't say much. Just wrapped his arms around me in that way that says, thank you, without the words. That weekend, Ava came to stay with us. And for the first time, I tried not to tiptoe. I asked her what she wanted to do. I let her pick dinner. We watched a movie she liked, one I would have never chosen, and I didn't check my phone once. Later that night, as I was tucking her in, she said, "You're different." I froze. Different how? She shrugged. Just, you feel closer. Like you're not scared. Out of the mouths of babes. I kissed her forehead. I'm trying really hard to be brave. She smiled, eyes already heavy. I like when you try. The wedding was now 6 weeks away. We had our final planning meeting with the photographer, Alice, a bright, efficient woman with a clipboard and zero tolerance for indecision. She ran through the schedule briskly. Couple shots first, then wedding party, then family. Who's in your immediate family list? Jonah glanced at me. I looked at Alice. Jonah, me, and Ava. Alice smiled. Checked her list. Perfect. It felt like a declaration. Like writing it into the script made it real. But that night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling again. I said yes, I whispered. So why do I still feel so unsettled? Jonah turned toward me. Because choosing someone doesn't erase what they bring with them. It just means you've decided it's worth carrying. I turned to him. Is it okay that I'm still learning how to carry it? He touched my face gently. It's more than okay. It's honest. We kissed. And for a moment, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was stepping out of the shadows. But the next day, I got an email from Alice. Subject, family portrait schedule. Body, hi Claire, just checking, I noticed you requested a few shots of you and Jonah alone, without Ava. Wanted to confirm if that was accurate or a mix-up? I'd forgotten to delete that line. And now, I had to decide if I still meant it. I didn't respond to Alice's email right away. I kept rereading it, staring at the blinking cursor in my draft window as if it might type something for me. As if the answer were simple, like RSVPing yes or no to a dinner party. The problem wasn't that I didn't know what I wanted. The problem was that I knew, and I didn't like what that said about me. I still wanted those photos. Just the two of us. Me and Jonah. Not forever, not exclusive, just something that was only ours. A snapshot of the moment before everything blurred together. But the timing now made it worse. After everything with Ava. After Melissa's call. After Jonah's quiet, measured patience. How could I say that out loud again without undoing all the ground we just gained? I drafted and deleted 3 responses. Let's keep the list as is. Thanks. Which felt like a lie. Actually, yes, I'd like a few without Ava. Which felt like a betrayal. Can we talk in person? Which felt like cowardice dressed up as diplomacy. In the end, I closed the laptop and went for a walk. It was nearly 8 p.m. The sun was low, painting long shadows across the sidewalk. I passed by the park where Ava had once fallen and scraped her knee, and I'd frozen for half a second before rushing to help her. I hadn't known what to say then. I still didn't. But I remembered how she'd looked up at me through tears and asked, "Will it scar?" I'd told her maybe. But not forever. Jonah noticed something was off that evening. He always did. "That email?" he asked, half joking, nodding toward my laptop. I smiled weakly. "You could say that. Want to talk about it?" "No."
But I think I should. I told him about the email. About the draft I'd never sent. About the ache that hadn't left. To my surprise, he didn't react right away. He just listened, brow furrowed, hands folded. When I finished, he said something that startled me. "I think you should keep those photos." I blinked. "What?" He took a deep breath. "Claire, I don't need every wedding photo to have Ava in it. I just needed to know that you weren't trying to erase her. That you weren't building a future that didn't include her at all." I felt a knot loosen in my chest. "You're allowed to want a moment that's just yours. Ours. That doesn't mean she doesn't matter." "Are you sure she won't feel left out?" I asked. He smiled. "You'll find a way to explain it. You always do better when you don't try to pretend." I wrote back to Alice the next morning. "Hi Alice. Thanks for checking. Yes, I'd love a few couple shots of just Jonah and me, in addition to the full family portraits. Let's talk through the timing so we can keep it quick and simple. Appreciate your thoughtfulness." She responded 5 minutes later, "Got it. Totally normal. We'll make sure everyone feels included and comfortable." "You're doing great, smiley face." The smiley face nearly undid me. It was so casual. So human. So opposite of the pressure I'd been putting on myself. A few days later, Ava brought home a drawing from school. It was her family picture. Her teacher had labeled it, "Draw everyone in your family." There we were. 4 people. Me, Jonah, Ava, and Melissa. I blinked. "Is that Mommy?" I asked, pointing. "Yeah," she said. "She's family too. But she doesn't come to the wedding 'cause it's your day." The clarity with which she understood things both amazed and humbled me. "And that's you," she added, pointing at a curly-haired stick figure next to Jonah. "You're wearing the big dress." I smiled. "I love it." That night, I told Jonah about the drawing. She included Melissa. He nodded. "Makes sense. Melissa's never been the enemy." I sighed. Sometimes I think I made her one in my head. Or maybe I just made her the symbol of everything I wasn't. Like what? The first. The mom. The one who didn't come after. Jonah took my hand. "Do you know what you are to me?" I looked up. "You're the one I chose. Not because of time, or obligation, or history. But because I want you next to me in every picture from here on out." My throat tightened. "And Ava?" I whispered. "She didn't choose you. But she likes you. And she trusts you." That's maybe even bigger. The next weekend, Ava asked if we could go shopping for wedding shoes. I took her. Just us. We tried on 5 pairs. Settled on ones with tiny rhinestones. She danced in them in the middle of the store. "Do you think I'll look like a princess?" she asked. "I think you'll look like yourself," I said. "Which is even better." She grinned. "And you'll look like a queen." We laughed. Back home, I opened the wedding binder again. This time, I made space for a new page, Ava's schedule. What time she'd arrive. When she'd be in photos. When she'd get to run off and play. And I added something else. A blank card for her to draw on. One I'd asked the photographer to capture, just for us. She didn't need to be in every photo. But she'd be part of the story. Because maybe that's what family really was. Not erasing, not replacing, just making room. Even in the margins. The wedding was now 4 weeks away. The final stretch. The point where people start asking more often if you're excited, their eyes scanning yours for proof that everything is perfect. I had mastered the smile by then. That calm, collected nod, the polished yes, everything's falling into place. I knew how to fake ease, especially for those who only wanted reassurance. But inside, I was trying to hold too many things at once: gratitude, guilt, excitement, and the fragile, flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, we were all going to survive this intact. Jonah and I had made peace, at least in the visible ways.
We had aligned our language, adjusted our expectations, even agreed to rewrite the ceremony script so that Ava would have a moment of her own.
A welcome. A few lines from the officiant about chosen family. A way of saying, you matter. I liked the idea.
Loved it, even. But I still felt distant.
Like I was performing the right role, but some piece of me hadn't caught up yet. And then came the rehearsal dinner. It was small, immediate family, wedding party, a few friends.
We held it at the winery where the reception would be. The sun set golden across the vineyards. The food was perfect. The wine was flowing. It should have been beautiful.
But I couldn't stop watching Melissa.
She was there, of course. She and Jonah had agreed from the beginning that Ava needed to feel no tension between homes that day. That meant she'd be present at the rehearsal, at the wedding, even seated at the family table.
I'd said yes. I'd meant it.
But watching her hug Ava, watching Jonah smile politely at her across the table, watching how naturally she moved through the evening, it unmoored me. At one point, I found myself standing outside, leaning against a stone wall, clutching my wineglass too tightly.
Lena found me there. Always Lena.
You look like you're about to either scream or shatter, she said.
Probably both. She lit a cigarette.
I didn't know she still smoked.
Want to tell me why you're glaring holes into the wine barrels? I shrugged. Do you ever feel like you're the extra? Like you got cast in the wrong story and everyone else already knows the lines? She gave me a look. Claire. You are literally the bride. It's your damn story. I shook my head. Is it? Because I'm not the first. I'm not the mother. I'm not even the only woman at this table who knows Jonah's favorite coffee order. That's not what this is about. No, I agreed.
But it's what it feels like. She was quiet for a moment. You're afraid of being the second choice, she said finally.
I blinked. Yes. That's exactly it. Lena took a drag, then looked at me with something softer in her eyes. Then ask yourself this: are you treating Ava like she's yours, or like she belongs to someone else? I swallowed. I don't know. That's okay. But you should find out. Because you can't spend the rest of your life holding her at arm's length and wondering why you never feel like part of the picture. After the rehearsal, Ava came to sit with me. She wore a flower crown someone had made from loose stems. Her fingers were sticky from dessert. Are you nervous? She asked. A little, I admitted. Are you? She shook her head. I already practiced walking and smiling. I'm really good at it. I smiled. I bet you are. She looked down. Mom said you picked a special dress for me. I did. She said it's white like yours. It is. She paused. Does that mean I'm your family now? The question gutted me. Not because of what it implied, but because I didn't know how to answer without sounding rehearsed. I took her hand. It means I'm really lucky to have you in my life. And that I want to be someone you can count on. That's what family is, right? She nodded. Then added, but if you ever get tired, you can just be Claire again. I laughed. A real laugh. Thanks, kid. I'll remember that. That night, Jonah asked if I was okay. We lay in bed, the covers tangled between us, both too wired to sleep. I'm better now, I said. But today was harder than I thought it would be. Because of Melissa? Because of me. He turned toward me. Talk to me. So I did. About the rehearsal. About the jealousy I didn't want to admit.
About the part of me that still flinched every time someone referred to us as a blended family, as if we'd all been pure ingredients poured into a single glass.
Jonah held my hand. You're allowed to want your own place in all this. But Claire, you already have it. You just keep forgetting.
2 weeks out, we had our final vendor meeting.
Seating, lighting, final payment confirmations. It should have been simple.
But the photographer brought something up again.
Do you want to do a first look with Ava? I blinked. A what? A moment before the ceremony. Just you two. A little reveal. We do it with parents sometimes. It's beautiful. I hesitated. Can I think about it? Of course, she said. Just let me know. That night, I sat with the idea. Turned it over. Held it against the parts of me that still hurt. A first look. Just me and her. Not Jonah. Not Melissa. Not the idea of a family, just what we actually were. And what we might become. I said yes. To the moment. To the photo. To Ava. I told Alice, the photographer, 2 days later. She beamed through the phone. Said it would be sweet. Said she'd seen it done before and it always made people cry, the good kind, she promised. I wasn't so sure about good crying anymore. Mine had been of the quiet, curled up, post-midnight kind lately. The kind that doesn't stain your face, just settles under your ribs like dust. But I said yes anyway, because I was trying. Because I'd promised Jonah I'd try. Because I owed Ava a moment where she knew, not guessed, not assumed, that she mattered to me. That week blurred in a mix of ribbon, schedule prints, and vows that still felt half done. Every time I thought about standing up there and saying forever, I felt two things at once, grounded and afraid. I loved Jonah. There was never a question about that. But the shape of love, the shape of family, it was still something I was learning to fit into. 3 days before the wedding, Ava had a stomach bug. Mild, but lingering. Jonah panicked. Melissa stayed calm. I hovered, unsure of whether to play nurse or step back. You can hold her hand, Melissa had said, almost like an invitation. So I did. We sat on the bathroom floor while Ava dozed between sips of water and murmured dreams. I sang quietly, a lullaby I remembered from childhood, one my mother used to hum in the car on long drives. You're not bad at this, Melissa said softly from the doorway. I looked up. Her expression was unreadable. Thanks. She didn't say more. Just nodded. But it felt like a truce. By the time the wedding morning arrived, Ava was better. Pale, but smiling. Her flower crown had been rebraided by Lena, who turned out to be surprisingly good with bobby pins. The makeup artist fussed over my hair. The planner adjusted table cards. I drank half a mimosa and stared at my dress like it belonged to someone else. You good? Lena asked. No, I said. But I'm doing it anyway. She smiled. Good. That's real love, not the movie kind. When it was time for the first look with Ava, I was already in my dress, nerves prickling under my skin. I stood at the edge of the garden, near the hedge path where she was supposed to walk out. Alice gave me a thumbs up. Then she arrived. Tiny white shoes. The rhinestone ones. A dress that matched mine, not exactly, but in spirit. A child-sized version of something formal and free. She carried a small bouquet of wildflowers. When she saw me, she stopped. Blinked. Then beamed. You look like a painting, she said. I laughed. You look like magic. She walked up and hugged me without asking. You said we'd take a picture together. I remember. And not because I have to. No. Because I want to. We posed. We giggled. Alice snapped shots of us twirling, of us holding hands, of Ava placing a flower in my hair. Later, Alice told me it was the most sincere moment she'd seen in months. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about sincerity. I was thinking about how light Ava felt when she leaned against me, and how maybe this wasn't about forcing myself into a role, but letting something softer take root. The ceremony was a blur. There were words, and music, and people I barely registered. I cried. Jonah cried. Ava stood between us holding both our hands. At the reception, people told me we looked like a dream. Jonah's mom said, "You really pulled it together." Melissa clinked her glass with mine and said, "To unexpected beginnings." And Ava, somewhere between cake and confetti, leaned in and said, "I think you're my family now." I blinked fast. "Okay," I whispered. "I'd like that." She nodded. But you can still just be Claire sometimes.
That night, after the last dance and the final sparkler fizzled, Jonah and I sat in the back of the car on the way to the hotel.
Exhausted. Happy. Wrung out.
You did it, he said.
No, I said. We did. He reached over. Took my hand. And for once, I didn't feel like I was holding on. I felt held. After the wedding, life didn't fall into a perfect pattern.
It wasn't like the credits rolled and we all knew our lines from that point forward.
It was messier. Quieter. Realer. The first week back felt like a dream.
There were still flowers in vases around the apartment, their edges curling at the tips, but the scent lingered. The wedding gift stood unopened in boxes at the corner of the living room, half forgotten amid the laundry and the returns to normalcy.
Jonah went back to work.
I stayed home for a few more days. I'd taken extra time off under the excuse of post-wedding rest, but really, I needed to catch my breath. Not from the event, but from the emotion of it all. There's a strange stillness that comes after something huge. Like standing in an empty theater after the show ends.
The audience gone. The lights dimmed. And all that's left is the echo. That's how it felt. Ava came over that weekend.
She ran through the door with her backpack, holding a drawing in one hand and a photo in the other.
It's us, she said, handing me the picture.
It was a print from the first look, me in my dress, her in hers, both of us laughing. I stared at it for a long time.
Do you want to hang it in your room? I asked.
She shook her head.
I want it in the hallway. So people see it when they come in. I swallowed hard. Okay. We found a frame.
Simple, wooden, warm-toned.
Jonah helped us hang it just left of the front door. Afterward, Ava stood back and nodded. It looks right there.
I stood beside her, trying not to cry.
Because it did. It looked right. The following week, I met Melissa for coffee. It wasn't planned.
I ran into her near the bookstore, and she offered, and I said yes before I could overthink it. We sat in a corner booth, small mugs between us.
She looked tired. I probably did too.
I wanted to say thank you, she said.
I raised an eyebrow. For what? For including Ava. For making space. I nodded. I'm still learning.
She smiled, but there was a touch of sadness in it.
We all are. Nobody tells you how to do this part.
There's no guidebook for blended families.
Just trial and error and grace if we're lucky. We sat in silence for a while. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. Do you regret anything? I asked. Plenty, she said. But not Ava. Never Ava. I didn't mean her. She paused. I know.
But she's what ties us all together. So whatever came before, we don't get to hold on to it like it's just ours.
We share it now. I let that sit for a moment.
Then she added, "You're doing okay, Claire."
I see it. Jonah and I argued the next evening. Not about Ava. Not even about anything real. Just stress. Work. Schedules. Dishes. The usual. But it got loud. Snippy. Old wounds dressed up as new grievances. Ava was in her room reading.
Afterward, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the dark window.
I thought it'd feel easier after the wedding, I said.
It's harder now, Jonah replied.
Because now it's real. Before it was planning. Now it's living. I nodded. He joined me on the edge. Took my hand. We'll fight. We'll mess up. But I don't want anyone else figuring it out with me. I just don't want to become someone I don't recognize in the process. You won't, he said. You've always known who you are. That's why I love you. I wasn't so sure. But I wanted to believe him. The next morning, I found a note taped to the hallway photo. In Ava's handwriting.
You look like a real princess here.
But you don't have to be one all the time. I like you in pajamas too. I laughed. Loud, breathy, unexpected. Jonah peeked out from the kitchen. What's funny? I showed him the note. He read it, then pulled me into a hug. She sees you, he whispered. The real you. And maybe, for the first time, I started to believe it. We took more photos that weekend. Not staged. Just moments. Ava cooking with Jonah. Me reading while she painted.
All of us in the backyard, a sprinkler on, water catching sunlight.
No one posed. No one directed. We printed some. Not all. Just the ones that felt alive. And on Sunday night, Ava said, maybe one day we can make a book. A photo book. Of just us. Not just the wedding? I asked. No. Real life. This life. That night, I lay in bed and thought about her words. A book. Not of what we staged. But of what we became. And I realized, the wedding was never the story. It was just the prologue. Fall arrived quietly. The heat broke slowly, days growing shorter by minutes until we found ourselves pulling sweaters from the back of the closet. There was something comforting in the shift, a rhythm we could lean into. A routine that helped blur the sharpness of transition. Ava started first grade. Jonah cried. I didn't, though I felt something thick lodge in my throat when she walked toward the school steps in her new backpack, turning just once to wave. We were finding our own patterns. Friday night pizza. Saturday morning grocery runs, with Ava riding on the edge of the cart and slipping cereal into the pile when she thought we weren't looking. She called us my house family and referred to her mom's place as my other house. It wasn't elegant, but it was hers. Honest. Unfiltered. Melissa and I kept a distant but civil line. Text updates, occasional handoffs at soccer practice, polite nods at back-to-school night. I no longer flinched when I saw her name on my phone. And yet, some days, I still wrestled with the voice in my head that whispered, "You're not really her mother. Don't pretend you belong here." It would come when I was helping Ava with homework. Or brushing her hair. Or signing a permission slip I hadn't seen first. That voice, persistent and slippery, reminded me of all the ways I hadn't earned this. But then Ava would say something like, "Can you braid it like you did on your wedding day?" And I would. And the voice would go quiet for a little while. One afternoon, I picked her up from school. She was quiet on the ride home. Bad day? I asked gently. She shrugged. It was okay. But someone asked me why I have two moms. My stomach tightened. What did you say? I said, one is my real mom, and one is the one who married my dad. I winced. Not at the phrasing, but at the inevitable sting that came with it. And then they asked if you're my stepmom. What did you say then? I said, kind of. But she's just Claire. Just Claire. I smiled. That's a good answer. She looked at me. Is that okay? More than okay. And I meant it. Because she wasn't trying to label me. She was describing me. On her terms. Jonah and I were still adjusting, too. The honeymoon glow had faded into routine, the unglamorous kind with bills and mismatched socks and last-minute grocery store runs. But sometimes, he'd brush my arm as he walked past, or leave sticky notes in the fridge that said things like, "You're doing better than you think." We fought. About schedules. About chores. About boundaries. But we also danced in the kitchen. And sometimes, Ava watched us. Smiling. Like we were hers, too. One rainy Sunday, she pulled an old album from the shelf, the wedding book we hadn't touched in months. Can I look? Of course, I said, settling beside her on the couch. She flipped through the pages, pausing on the one with the first look. You were so pretty, she whispered. You were magic, I replied. She looked at me, serious. Do you still feel like family? The question surprised me. Why do you ask? She shrugged. Because weddings are about family. And after that, it just goes back to normal. I thought for a moment. I think family isn't something that just shows up at a wedding. It's something you choose every day. Even when it's messy. Especially when it's messy. She nodded, slowly. Then, quietly, I'm glad you stayed. I pulled her close. Me too. Later that night, I found a sheet of paper on the kitchen counter. A drawing, with stick figures, Jonah, me, Ava. All labeled. Above it, in crooked crayon. My family, at this house. And beneath that. It's not perfect, but I like it. I smiled. Framed it. Hung it next to the photo from the wedding. 2 truths. Side by side. And both of them real. Thanksgiving came fast. Somehow, fall always felt like a trick of time, slow afternoons, quick months. We had decided to host this year, a decision that had seemed ambitious and even charming in September. By mid-November, it felt like a dare. Jonah's parents were coming. So were his brother and sister-in-law. And Melissa, too, for Ava's sake. We'd agreed it was easier for Ava to have everyone in one place rather than splitting time, and to be honest, I didn't want to compete with tradition. Ava had always spent the holiday with her dad's side. This was my first time being folded in. The night before, I stood in the kitchen prepping sweet potatoes, stuffing, cranberry compote, and a version of pumpkin pie that Ava insisted include chocolate chips. She danced around in fuzzy socks, adding too much nutmeg when I wasn't looking and humming some made-up holiday tune. Jonah was hanging lights in the entryway. Everything looked soft and golden and warm. But I was nervous. Not about the meal, but about the table. Because no matter how big it was, I couldn't shake the feeling that I might not really have a seat at it. When the guests arrived, everything moved fast. Wine was poured, coats were taken, introductions made. Melissa brought a homemade apple tart. Ava beamed. My 2 moms both bake, she announced. There was a flicker across the room. An awkward pause. But Melissa just smiled. Well, Claire's got me beat on presentation. I said thank you. We moved on. But the moment stayed with me. Ava had said it without hesitation, not stepmom, not dad's wife. Just, my 2 moms. I hadn't earned it. But it was given anyway. The dinner itself was chaotic in the best way. Laughter, spilled gravy, mismatched chairs. Ava said grace, which was mostly her listing all the food she was grateful for, plus her cat and her pillow. At dessert, she pulled out a piece of construction paper. A family tree project from school. Can I show everyone? She asked. Of course, Jonah said. She held it up proudly. Here's Mommy. Here's Daddy. Here's Claire. Here's Grandma and Grandpa. And here's Melissa's mom even though she lives far away. I stared at the drawing. My name was there. In marker. Not in parentheses. Not off to the side. Just there. After everyone left, and Ava had gone to bed, I stood in the kitchen drying dishes. Melissa lingered. Thank you, she said. I turned. For what? For not making it weird. For letting her feel whole. I nodded. Thank you for trusting me to be part of it. She smiled. It's not always easy. But I think we're figuring it out. I hope so. Claire, she added. You do know she loves you, right? My throat tightened. Some days I forget. Don't. That night, I lay awake next to Jonah. She called us her 2 moms, I whispered. He smiled in the dark. She said what she felt. I'm scared of messing it up. You will. So will I. So will Melissa. That's the deal. But she's so open. So ready to love. It scares me how much I want to protect that. That's why you belong, he said. Because you care that much. The next morning, I found a note in my coat pocket. Ava's handwriting. Claire, thank you for the turkey. And the pie. And the hugs. You are my family. Even if you're not super good at board games. I laughed out loud. Then I cried a little. Then I tucked the note into my wallet like it was something sacred. Later that week, I walked past the hallway photo, the one from the first look, and paused. I'd looked at it 100 times, but this time I noticed something new. In the background, slightly blurred, was Jonah. Watching us. It wasn't staged. Just a moment captured. Him, watching me with Ava. A quiet smile on his face. And I realized, that was the real wedding photo. Not posed. Not perfect. Just true. Because maybe family isn't about symmetry. Or shared names. Or labels. Maybe it's about who stands behind you, even when they're out of focus. It's been 6 months since the wedding. Enough time for the flowers to fade, the last thank you notes to be mailed, the box of extra favors to collect dust under the guest bed. Enough time for real life to reclaim its rhythms. Our family, if I've learned anything, doesn't move in straight lines. We orbit, we overlap, we shift. But somewhere in all that movement, we've started to feel more solid. Ava is 7 now. She reads chapter books on her own and insists on making her own breakfast, which usually means cold cereal and a kitchen disaster. Her handwriting is less wobbly. Her questions more pointed. Do you think I'll live in 2 houses forever? She asked me recently. I don't know, I told her. But you'll always have 2 homes. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Jonah and I are, okay. Good, even. Our marriage feels less like a mountaintop now and more like a long walk. Sometimes steep. Sometimes smooth. But moving. Together. We still argue. About the dishes. About screen time. About how many bedtime stories is too many. But we also kiss over the coffee pot. And hold hands in traffic. And sometimes we laugh so hard at Ava's knock-knock jokes we can't breathe. I've learned that love, the kind that matters, isn't loud. It's not always grand. Sometimes it's just showing up again. And again. And again. The picture in the hallway is still there. Ava likes to straighten it when she walks by. She points it out to guests like a docent in a gallery. That's me and Claire. Before the wedding. I was a flower girl and she was the bride. We matched. I've stopped flinching when she says my name like that. Stopped wondering whether I've earned it. Stopped waiting for someone to question why I'm there. Because I am there. I was. I still am. We took a new picture last weekend. Nothing fancy. Just the 3 of us, in the park, arms around each other. Ava held the camera remote. She wanted to try something called a candid pose, which mostly meant catching us mid-laugh. When I saw it later, I felt something shift. Not just the smile. Or the light. But how I looked at myself. I didn't see an outsider trying to fit in. I saw a woman who had grown into her place. Who had made room. Who had been made room for. We printed it. Framed it. Put it in the hallway. Next to the old one. I thought it might feel like a replacement. But it didn't. It felt like a continuation. A second sentence in a story that's still being written. A few days later, Ava added a sticky note to the new frame. This is my house family. We're kind of weird but I love them. Jonah took a picture of the sticky note and made it his phone background. I saved the original. Pressed it between 2 pages in my journal like a keepsake. Because someday, Ava will grow up. She'll leave drawings and crayon notes and mismatched socks behind. But I'll still have that line. That truth. We're kind of weird. But we love each other. I used to think a wedding would define the beginning of our family. Now I know it's the choosing, every day after, that makes it real. And in all our messy, shifting, beautiful ways, we chose each other. We still do. We always will.